Hello guys and welcome back to TNT Madness. Today we are going to be looking at a near unraidable base, and I like to do these far and few in between, as I like to do as much research as I possibly can, as I am still learning like everyone is, as faction shifts to different walls and cannons and stuff. So today I'm going to be showing you my version of what I think is one of the strongest bases that you can possibly make. This is of course taking into consideration the space that I've built it in, which is 7 chunks, the time it would take to build this base, and all sorts of other factors like that, with current cannons like, let's say, reverse, all your one-shots, and even some of the newer cannons that have come out that seem to be pretty insane, because if you're having a base this size, then you're going to have to worry about them, such as mid-stackers. And don't worry, this can defend all those types of cannons quite easily. So if you do end up building this base, which you could do, it'll take you a long time, but you could, it should do you quite well. And if you have any feedback about this base, then you can leave it in the description below. And if anyone wants to try and raid it, then please send me a video of you doing that, and just put a video or a link to the video in the comments below, and I will look at it, because I don't know if anyone's going to be actually able to raid this, but I'm sure if someone spends enough time on it, then they will be. So there'll be a world download in the description too if you want to have a look more in depth into this base. So this base is of course a 7 by 7 chunk base, and mostly consists of a bunch of walls, mostly the main base with a regen roof, then 2 regen filters, upgraded regen wall, a bunch of layers, and then a checker box. And I'll be going in depth into each of these and why I think they're strong and why I put them in this order and why I designed each little feature. There are a few extra things inside this base too, like a reverse protection on the bottom, and just like a thing at the bottom where you have slab protection, but just a bunch of stuff that I'm going to explain now. So let's get into the video. So now on to this. So we're going to be going inwards to outwards and explaining all the walls in detail, because the main ones are really quite complex, and then they go in a long way from explaining, because they have to be really close to your base to actually be as effective as possible, than having like 10s or as many walls as you want after that of just regular wraps, or just whatever you call the walls, just regular walls. In the cannoning world or the factions world, they're called wraps, for those who didn't know. So the first thing we have here is our main base, and you're probably wondering why it is actually a lava roof, and that's because it is to stop mid-air stackers, which are essentially cannons that can shoot all the way to the middle of here and then stack sand down with anywhere they want without a backboard, with a backboard being a wall. So the way that this works is you have lava on top of some solid block and then have water underneath it. So if I go ahead and destroy a block here, it will regenerate, as you can see here. So this will regenerate, and we just have a small area here which essentially stops mid-air stackers, as they can't then go ahead and destroy straight inside your base. And then if you have this over top of a couple of walls, then they can't destroy it the normal way. So this mid-air stackers aren't as prevalent, but if you are building a big base, then it is important to have some sort of defense like this, as it is one of the stupidest ways at the moment to get raided, even though mid-air stackers are one of the most complex cannons to actually build, and they're one of the most expensive cannons to build. But the thing is, if they do destroy this, then they destroy the blocks around it, then they are going to have to make an area, and then they're going to have to then destroy blocks underneath it like this. It creates this little effect, but then this one here will still regenerate. And essentially, the further you have, the more blocks you have down that are ocean or water blocks, it exponentially gets harder. So it means it's 2 or 3 times harder for every block you actually add, which means it takes like 100 shots just to get through the small area, which would probably take less to actually get through the whole base if you did it very, very strategically or planned it out how you would do it. So that is essentially how that works. It's really the only defense we have on the roof, because we don't need any other roof defense to stop roof busters, because it's a regen defense. They can destroy it and it'll just regenerate anyway, so that's not an issue. So the next wall we have is 2 double regen filters, and they are 1 block above each other. And if you don't know what a regen filter is, I did a video on about a week ago. If you want to go have a look at it, it is a very, very strong wall that essentially only fusion cannons that can get through, which are just cannons that can shoot through 1 block. And I don't know how to build and know very little about them, so I can't really talk that in depth about them. But they are very strong walls that are almost unraidable, as you can't regen bust them to actually destroy them, which is really, really strong, because that's the best way to actually get through a regen wall. and even if they do fusion cannon it, they will be able to stack along this backboard as this wall here, and if you're worried about that, you can just extend this out by one, but I don't think it's really an issue, because if you can fusion cannon it, then you can just stack all the way back to this backboard, and then sand stack, and then sand stack, and sand stack, then blow up this, but you're still going to have yet another regen filter to get through. And once you have like 12 walls, and you're going to have to change your Y height to break through the second one, then that means they're probably going to have to blow through all the extra walls by going down one block, unless they had a huge like scatter. Then yeah, so that could be annoying. It might be a problem, and that's why we have these sort of walls so close to the base, because if you have more walls, you essentially can make a bigger area to actually cause you have a bigger area in which cannons have to go through, because essentially the further the distance is and the smaller space they have to fire it through, the harder it is to get through a wall. That's why people normally have the strongest walls in the middle, and then lots of wraps, as wraps are super easy to make. You can have them in a huge area and they still take a while to get through. Even if you have like a one shot, if you have 50 wraps to get through, it's going to take a lot of TNT, a lot of time, and then you'll probably get stuck up by something like a regen filter, or what we have next, which is an upgraded regen wall. And this cannot be busted by a traditional regen buster. I'm not exactly sure how you can actually break these walls, which is not good on my behalf, but essentially you can't regen bust it normally or water push it to break it, as these blocks in the middle here would actually break. And there are two ways to actually build this. Is the way I have it at the moment is I have all of these as lava source blocks, so I have it facing this way, but if you just want to have these top ones as lava source blocks, you'd place this around the other way where these blocks are at the front. But essentially all these blocks are regenable. So essentially all of these blocks are regenable, and it just makes it very, very difficult to actually get through these regen walls. So if someone of course does manage to bust through these walls, then they're going to go up to here, hit the regen wall, and then even if they regen bust it, then they're going to have to go all the way back, move their cannon across by one, and then blow up the middle bit. So these original walls were created by Mindchat, who's a very, very good base builder and wall guy thing. He's a really great guy, and he's the original one that did that. So I'll have a video on my tutorial for it, hopefully, and his if I do remember. So that's essentially this. The rest we have is just over 10 wraps, and the reason for this is just because it's more defense. There is nothing really that is stronger than... So we have a total of 14 wraps before what we have is one thing that I think is very useful, but a lot of people think is completely useless, and that is what is called a checker box. And the reason it's called a checker box is because it is essentially checks if you've been raided really easily. Because what happens is, if you don't know what a checker box is, essentially is a giant sand wall that has a line of redstone across it, and then once a sand is broken, then sand will fall, it'll break the redstone line, and then you can set a home somewhere up here and then check it every so often, so you don't have, just in case you're worried about getting raided. And if it's on, then you're not raided, and if it's off, then someone's destroyed at least one of your walls, and you should probably be concerned. So a lot of people don't like this because sand walls take absolutely forever to build, which is fine. You don't have to build this up if you are building this base, but I just think it's nice to have if you are building a massive base, as that way you can just check to see if you've been raided or not. You don't need more than one. I'd recommend just having one as the amount of wall, because if they do get through one wall, then they're probably either going to get through one wall, or they're going to get through all of them. There's not really much in between, because when people cannon, they go really in depth and looking at the walls and how they're going to raid it, and they will only raid your base if they know how to, or most people do, or if there's some person who just thinks they're really smart and just hybrids the wall and then realizes they can't get through the next wall, then this thing will go off. So you can either have this or it behind a wall, but I feel like just having it the edge of your defense is great. And the added benefit of it is, since it's a sand wall, if they do attack from really low down, then they'll hybrid it, the sand will fall, and they'll have to hybrid it like 20 times or something to actually break it. And just be aware that this thing should be built from sky limit to bedrock, as that way you'll get the best out of it, or at least build the very top at sky limit, because that's how I've based most of this stuff around. We also have this tiny barrier in front of it, which essentially just makes it so it's harder to cannon, but of course it's just something that is to help you, and if someone's trying to annoy you, then they can drywall shot this. Again, super optional. So now if we go down to the bottom here, there is a lot going on down here. So we don't get the best of views, but essentially what we have is we have all our walls up here and then a giant area stuck down the bottom here, and this is essentially so people can't just go ahead and regen bust you, not regen bust you, reverse stack you. But there are a few small things that could make it so they could reverse you, but essentially the way that you reverse is if there's a giant chunk of land below you, you'd fire through it and then use the land as a backboard, fire backwards up, so you essentially sand stack backwards and destroy the bottom of a base or a something. So this essentially makes it so there's no backboard because this is all completely empty space, as we just have slabs at the bottom, so if someone does of course use sand and they don't slab bust it, then the sand is going to break. Very basic, but most one-shot cannons have a slab bust anyway, so someone who can build a cannon, basic cannon like that, then it'll be no problem for them to get through this, but it is something nice to have. But it just means that no one can really reverse you. But if they somehow do, which then the only way that I can think of that they can do is if they actually use the slabs to break all the slabs and then use it as a backboard, then they could use that. And then we have our regen thing there as well. But what we have here is some extremely basic reverse protection, because essentially what happens is if they try and reverse, it'll hit the wall here, go down, and then they won't be able to sand stack. Or at least if they do, then if they try and fire upwards at it, then it won't stick properly as it may hit the side, or it clicks. I'm not the best at reverse protection, but this is pretty much the most basic reverse protection. And it's just an upside down pyramid essentially. But very, very basic protection, but it's at a base of this size you do have to worry about stuff like that. So I'd recommend having something like that. So of course I'm not going to be doing a tutorial on this base, but if you want to have a look at it more in depth, then you can download it in the description below. There'll be a world download. It should be at the first link. And if you want to try and raid it, then go for it. I would be very intrigued to know how you raid it, as I'm trying to get more knowledge too. And it will help me to make future near unraidable bases stronger. And also this is quite a bigger one, as it is 7 by 7 chunks. But if you are building on a corner or something, then it'll only be 4 by 4 chunks. So hopefully this video helped you in some way, and if it did, please leave a like. But anyway, goodbye from TNT Madness.